Hey friends, welcome back to Acre Homestead. Today is an exciting day. We are going to be canning cowboy candy. This is a 30-quart stainless steel bowl filled with jalapenos. What cowboy candy is it's pickled, candied jalapenos. It is so ridiculously good. I put it on almost everything. I put it on burgers, I put it on pizza, I put it on burritos, you name it. If you want a little spicy, sweet something on it, cowboy candy is what you need in your life. So I just went ahead and sliced up 10 pounds of jalapenos. This is a lot of jalapenos, but we go through a lot around here, and also I gift this. I have tons of family and friends that love cowboy candy, and not many of them make it, so I make it and I gift it. So we're not only gonna take these jalapenos and make cowboy candy, but I'm gonna can it and I'm gonna show you how to do that. What I've already done with these jalapenos is I've taken the stems off them and I ran them through my food processor so that they'd be sliced up. I don't wanna touch it to show you because then I would have the jalapeno spiciness all over my hands, and that just made it a lot easier doing it in the food processor. I've done this by hand with a knife, but it just takes a long time. So I like to do it in the food processor when we're doing this amount of cowboy candy. This also makes a fantastic appetizer. What I love to do is just put a block of cream cheese, pour a jar of cowboy candy on the top, and you eat it with crackers, and oh my gosh, that's so good. That's actually the first way I ever had this cowboy candy. I am making a ridiculous amount of cowboy candy today, but I'm gonna leave a reasonable size recipe down in the description box below at scratchpantry.com, which is my blog if you want to check out the recipe. I'll also link all the canning equipment and the bulk supplies that I use for this. I buy my sugar and salt in bulk, and when I do this much canning that I do around here, that's just a great way for me to get organic products for a great price. So if you want to check any of that out, it will be down in the description box. I have a stock pot on the stove, and what we need to do first is make the sugar brine solution. It's super simple. This ratio couldn't be easier. It's 1 part vinegar to 2 part sugar. A lot of recipes actually put a lot more sugar in theirs. I found that this is a great ratio. So I am adding pink Himalayan salt in here right now. When you're canning, you want to make sure you don't use iodized salt. I buy this in bulk, and I found a great price on Amazon for it. Now we are just going to dissolve this sugar and vinegar solution in here. A lot of recipes call for a ton of extra added ingredients like turmeric and ginger and garlic, mustard powder, and just a bunch of different things. And for my family, we have found that we really just enjoy it when it's the sugar, the vinegar, the salt, and the jalapenos. It just lends to a really sweet, tangy, spicy condiment that if you guys have never tried this, you've got to try it. The first time I ever had this was actually in hygiene school. One of my hygiene classmates brought this in. Her and her family every year would make, I don't know, 20, 50 jars of this, and she brought it in and she'd bring it in with crackers and cream cheese, and that was probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and ever since then I've made it every year after that. So all we're doing now is dissolving the sugar. All right, so this is ready to go. It is boiling like crazy. While I was waiting for this to boil, I got my canner on, and it is starting to get warm. We are going to add the jalapenos to this boiling liquid. Now what we want to do is have this come back to a boil because I added all those peppers. It definitely dropped the temperature. And we are going to cook it for 5 minutes. The reason we want to do this is because what it'll do is it'll shrink the peppers, and so we'll be able to get more peppers into our jar. If we just raw packed it, which you could do technically, then what would happen is when you go to can it, the peppers are going to shrink, so you won't have as many peppers in your jar. Ask me how I know that, because one year I didn't want to do this step, and I ended up with about only half the jar filled with peppers by the end. So this is boiled on the stove for 5 minutes, and it is ready to be canned up. I have clean jars out here. The way I like to clean my jars before I can them is I just run them through the dishwasher, and we are going to take these peppers and fill them up in here. I have both pint and half pint jars. What I like to do is try to strain a little bit of the juice out, because I definitely made more brine than I need. And I try to get those peppers packed in there pretty tightly. And you want to leave about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch headspace, right? Just like that. This is really, really spicy cowboy candy this year. Some years they're not as spicy. It really just depends on the jalapenos I get. Last year's jalapenos were not very spicy, and I still have some of those left. It'll be good to have some really hot ones and some that aren't so hot. I'll just make sure to label that 2021's cowboy candy is super hot. I like to just kind of push down just a little bit to make sure I get any air bubbles out. I just turned my canner on to start heating up. I'm gonna water bath can these in my pressure canner. Now I'm gonna take a clean damp rag and wipe the rims of each jar. We wanna make sure there's no food or debris or sugar on the outside that will inhibit a good seal. And to feel the jar to make sure there's no dings or nicks in the jar. With 10 pounds of jalapenos, I got 10 pints and 1/2 pint, which will be plenty for my husband and I, because my husband doesn't actually really like spicy food. I love it though. And I love to give these to my dad and my brother. They love spicy food. And this is a really, really hot batch. So I just put a clean lid on each one of these, and now we're gonna put a ring on each one as well. So we wanna get our jars into the canner. Our water is pretty warm and our jars are pretty warm. They're cool enough, I guess, for me to touch, but they're about the same temperature as the water, which is good because you don't wanna put warm jars into cold water or cold jars into hot water, because then you're more likely to break your jars. So you wanna kinda make sure that the jar and the water are about the same temperature. What we're gonna do now is we are gonna water bath can these for 15 minutes. So once this comes to a rolling boil, then I will set the timer for 15 minutes. Now, if you're 1,000 feet above sea level, please check your canning times because you might have to increase that. After this came to a rolling boil and I boiled it for 15 minutes, I turned the canner off and I let it kind of just cool down for 5 minutes before I take the jars out of the canner. And that way it can just help kind of relax everything and it won't shock it quite so much. Then when you're taking your jars out of the canner, you wanna make sure you put them on a towel or a placemat or something like that. That way there isn't such a temperature change between the jar and the counter, especially if you have granite counters. And now I'm gonna put my jars that didn't fit in the first round in there, and we're gonna get these ones canned up as well. I'm gonna let these jars sit on the counter for 24 hours. Once they're done, I'll take the rings off, mark what they are, and they'll go in the pantry. You don't wanna store your canning lids with the rings on, because if you're gonna have a lid fail, you wanna know it's gonna fail. You don't wanna rely on the ring to keep the lid on, and that's why we always store our canning lids without the rings on them. I hope you guys give this a try. This was probably the second thing I ever canned, and it's something I can every single year. It's a staple in our house, and it's just fantastic. It's good as the appetizer, it's good as a condiment, and it's just all around really, really good. So I hope you guys try this. Like I mentioned earlier, the recipe will be linked down in the description box at scratchpantry.com if you want to check that out. Also, if you're new, I hope you subscribe because I have a ton of stuff going on. Actually, today on the stove right there, we're making a simple classic just red hot sauce. And then here on the counter, we're fermenting some sauce to make some homemade sriracha sauce, which sriracha is actually my favorite hot sauce, so I'm excited about that. So if you're new, I hope you consider subscribing. In the meantime, if you're new and you want to watch some of my other videos, they will pop up right here, so you can go watch those. I hope you guys are all having a great day. I hope your gardens are abundant, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Bye, guys.